And hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm so excited to be here with you today. My name is Rachel Malarich, and I am the City Forest Officer for the City of Los Angeles. And I've been engaging on the issue of tree canopy equity since I began working in the urban forestry field about 17 years ago. And I'm so encouraged by how this topic has evolved over time, including the development of the framework and research that you've heard about from the other presenters today. It's really exciting to continue to see our field evolve on this topic. In previous roles, I did a lot of work on the ground, working with communities and working with teams to organize tree planting, tree care events in school streets and parks, in high-need communities, and learning to listen and really developing strategies for listening and doing robust community engagement. In my current role, I'm responsible for leading the development and implementation of the city's first urban forest management plan, as well as being the city's technical expert, leading interdepartmental and external coordination on urban forestry topics for the city to ensure that all our city actions are moving toward the same types of urban forestry outcomes and best practices. Since our office began in 2019, we are a new office in the city of LA. We've had the pleasure of partnering with a variety of research and other partners, particularly as we think about addressing the complex problem of tree canopy equity. So I'm honored to be here with this larger community of practitioners and share a bit about our work. I'm going to share a little bit about collaboration, because it's really essential. I'm going to talk a bit about beyond tree planting specifically, and then talk a little bit about complexity and next steps. So I'll just start by sharing this image. Some of you may have seen the National Geographic cover in July 2021. I was so excited to see this issue of tree canopy equity, particularly in LA, on the cover of National Geographic. And on this image, you see one street in Los Angeles going from a more affluent neighborhood to a more high-need, underinvested community that is experiencing still the impacts of redlining decisions made a long time ago. So how do we address this issue where some neighborhoods have access to trees in their canopy and shade and benefits, access to nature, and other communities don't? This is kind of our ongoing question. And I'll just start by wanting to give really a shout out. Again, we have this unprecedented funding that has moved through the USDA Forest Service for the Inflation Reduction Act. And the image I have here on the left is a convening that happened in Southern California, where the Forest Service team brought together all the practitioners that had received funds in Southern California to discuss how we could best leverage this moment, the different resources, the different programs that were being put together by those different grants. And I think that that's really key and critical, at least in our region, is how we really leverage any new projects and programs and communicate about those so that we build off of each other. And even this webinar is another example of those opportunities to really take work that we're doing and expand the impact by sharing it. On the right-hand side, I have a map of the canopy cover for Los Angeles. This is our latest data set. And you can see that we have the green area in the middle is the Santa Monica Mountains and hillside areas that were historically treed. And then you can see across the city that we have a lot of areas that have very low tree canopy cover and subsequently more exposure to extreme heat and poor air quality. So collaboration is really critical. I'm going to highlight two project partners that, again, I could spend the whole 10 minutes just talking about one of these projects and still not exhaust them. But I'm really glad that you'll have a chance in the chat to get that link and take a look. The first is the Urban Forest Equity Collective, and here we have our screen with the logos of all those partners. That group was founded under the leadership of Edith de Guzman and Rachel O'Leary, that led this team in collaboration with all these partners in the city to think about this issue of tree canopy equity. The second project partner that I'm going to highlight is the University of Southern California Urban Trees Initiative that's led under the public exchange team that they have. And on this slide, you can see that they have staff researchers and students helping us on topics like GIS mapping, landscape architecture, air quality, remote sensing, and community engagement. Again, both of them have tremendous amount of work. I've been working with them almost since the beginning of my time in this role 5 years ago. And I really encourage you to explore some of the outcomes and information that they've put together working directly with urban forest practitioners here in LA, tackling topics that you may be addressing in your community. I'll just flag one of the things that they helped us think through is how we prioritize. So the city of LA is around just shy of 500 square miles. So where do we start first? On the left-hand side, you can see one of the products from the UFEC, Urban Forest Equity Collective group, that first slide with those many partners. They helped us think through criteria for determining which neighborhoods we might want to start in first. Not that saying that they are the only neighborhoods that need work, but how we might prioritize and look at criteria to prioritize where we start doing early investment. On the right-hand side, USC's team helped us think through various criteria and then enhance community engagement in those neighborhoods to determine further prioritization. What streets, what neighborhood blocks might we prioritize for early investment? So again, from the neighborhood scale, like which neighborhoods should we be looking at first? And then the other project helping us think through as one of their project deliverables, where in the community we prioritize these. I'll say that both projects, one of the great things about them as partners is they both prioritized bringing in resources and critical partners for community engagement as part of their projects. And so it, again, not just data, not just this analysis from the outside, but also having intentional community conversations throughout the project to make sure that we are informed by what was really true on the ground and true in community experience. One other thing I'll add is the UFEC project gave us some new language around how we talked about planting opportunities in high need communities. Tier 1 talks about available space, where we really just need a shovel and some funding for establishment care maintenance. You know, we have an available location, we could plant it today and reach our canopy targets for a certain community. Tier 2 are ones where we're really glad that for things like the IRA grants that came forward, where maybe we just need to cut some concrete and meet some new tree wells, but no really strenuous effort, just maybe some more money and time. And then Tier 3 is this kind of catch-all for where these locations, the built environment does not give us a lot of space to room to work to add new canopy for high need communities. And we're going to have to be more inventive, either in street redesign, adding new park space, or supporting more private property tree planting. So again, we're thinking, how do we address tree canopy equity? How do we make sure that our residents have access to shade and protection from extreme heat in particular? And we need to talk to communities. And that's what we spent a lot of time doing, both, again, across those projects I mentioned, as well as our office's work in developing the city's first urban forest management plan. And what did we hear? What have we heard from practitioners? What have we heard from the public? It cannot be about just planting. And I think that Amber touched on this a little bit in her discussion of, resident trust and memory with city actions. These are what I've referred to as the 4 pillars of urban forest management. If we plant, but don't also maintain those trees and preserve our existing mature trees and engage with the public, we do not achieve tree canopy equity. And engagement goes 2 ways, both in terms of educating the public around why we're putting trees in their community and the benefits they provide, but also doing that deep listening about their priorities and concerns as we design the urban forest in their neighborhood. So again, planting has to be matched with maintenance, and we're not just talking about young tree maintenance. So I refer to that as establishment care, watering, staking, all that work that you do to get the tree through the first few years. And in California, it's particularly important because we have such a long time without dedicated rainfall. So we have to provide supplemental water at the beginning. Even if we pick drought tolerant plants, we got to water them at the beginning. I'm talking about beyond that. I'm talking about tree trimming, risk management over the life cycle of our trees. And a lot of communities say, the city hasn't maintained the tree in my neighborhood. Why should I let you plant a new one? As one example. On the preservation side, the UFEC project even ended up including a small description in one of their final reports of some thoughts around tree preservation, even though it wasn't part of their scope, because it came up so many times in community conversations. Are we preserving the existing trees that we have? It is absolutely critical that we do that. So again, we're looking at spaces like this street. As an urban forest practitioner, I'm looking at this block. I see overhead lines. I see really narrow sidewalks that need to maintain ADA compliance. And I don't see a lot of roadway width to get me there. To additional shade for residents that are pedestrians or using public transit. Here's one of the renderings from one of the USC projects that was looking at, again, the current conditions are on the left, where you see that there's a couple small stature trees, to the right, where we see it as maybe being more of a community hub where there's protection from heat events and more access to significantly more nature. How do we make this shift? This is the question. So we've got collaboration, which is really what we're building off of. We've got beyond tree planting to those 4 pillars of urban forest management, and now thinking about the change. We need to make space for large stature tree species in order to really shade our residents. And we need to do that from 2 vantage points. One is, again, through this lens of providing new shade for communities. And then secondly, in this slide, we know that some of the neighborhoods that have high tree canopy cover or decent tree canopy cover now may lose that canopy over time because the existing conditions are actually not ideal for the size canopy they currently have. So when the tree on the right is removed, we're going to be putting in right tree, right place. As a practitioner, I'm going to say I'm going to put in a smaller stature tree species so it won't lift the sidewalk and make it inaccessible to people in wheelchairs or with strollers, et cetera. But if we think about new design and think about how we can accommodate large tree species, we won't have that downsizing of the urban forest. And that's really critical for us to think about. I'm going to just wrap up. So on our end, what's next is implementing the grant that our Bureau of Sanitation and Environment received from IRA, Belief in Equity, where they're planting trees around local schools that are adjacent to freeways. We're working to include distributional, recognitional, and procedural equity in our first urban forest management plan. So beyond just thinking, oh, everybody should have access to trees, which is where we start, but including those other two elements in the design of our UFMP. Thinking about neighborhood level canopy expansion plans, so not tree planting plans, but going to the neighborhood level and having a conversation with them about what investments in urban forest management activities need to happen to get to the canopy target that we have for different neighborhoods. And then as a community, my final pitch is that we keep collaborating, but that we embrace complexity. Do not distill dealing with tree canopy equity down to a tree planting number, because my current experience and the experience of people here, and I'm assuming that many of you have this also in your city, is we don't have enough space with business as usual to reach some of the canopy targets that we should be for our high need vulnerable populations. So I'd encourage us to keep embracing complexity and thinking through how can we make space for the types of trees that we really need to reach our goals to protect populations. Thanks so much, and I look forward to the dialogue that's coming next. I'll pass it back to you, Philip.